Good evening and welcome to our Christmas Eve services. We are so happy to have you here with us to celebrate. Would you stand as we sing?
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns. Let men their songs employ, while fields and floods, rocks, hills and plains repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy. Sins and sorrows grow. No thorns infest the ground. He comes to make his blessings flow. Far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found. He rules the world with truth and grace. He makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love. Sing that again. is born. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born.
Well, good evening and welcome to SMCC Lehigh. Go ahead and have a seat. My name is Stephanie. We are so glad that you're joining us and celebrating Christmas with us this evening. I'm going to read a passage for you. This comes from John chapter 1, verse 14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. That's what we're celebrating today. The God of the universe coming into human form, fully God and fully man, to draw near to us, to be in relationship with us on that beautiful Christmas morning. If you're new here, one of the things we like to say is we're in the valley and for the valley. And what that means is it's our mission and our joy to reach everyone here in this valley, to create lasting relationships that can bring joy, healing, hope, through personal relationship with Jesus, all made possible because he chose to leave heaven and come and draw near to us on Christmas. We're so thankful that you're celebrating with us. We're going to keep the celebration going, and welcome to our service. Go ahead and stand back up and join the band.
This next song that we're about to sing is a new version of an old Christmas carol. It talks of shepherds and wise men. In Luke, it tells us of the shepherds on the night of Jesus' birth, and it says this: When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." And that must have been an indescribable experience. It was new, exciting news, and they ran and told everyone along the way while they were looking for Jesus. I know that when I became a believer, I didn't know very much, but I knew that Jesus had become real to me, and I wanted everyone to know that. Matthew, we see the wise men ask, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." The wise men traveled an incredible distance, but they didn't come requesting anything. They came to worship. They brought the finest of gifts because they understood that Jesus would not become a king through conquering or birthright, that he wouldn't become worthy of praise later down the road, but he was already worthy because he was already born a king. I hope we find examples of both in ourselves. I hope that we have such an excitement for the good news of who Jesus is that we can't possibly keep it to ourselves. And that when we come to him, that we come with only the desire to praise him and to worship him. Let's continue to sing.
The first Noel, the angels did say, was to certain poor shepherd in fields as they lay, in fields where they lay keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, sing with us. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel. Oh, we sing to you, Lord.
made hell and earth of night, and with his blood mankind has bought nowhere, nowhere.
Noel, Noel, born is the King of Israel. He is born, Son of God has come to dwell, King of kings and Lord of lords, Emmanuel. He is born, hope for all. Now go and tell, he has come to save the world. We sing Noel, Noel, King of kings and Lord of lords, Emmanuel. He has come to save the world. We sing Noel, Noel. God, we thank you for sending your Son and for the gift that he is. God, that his love is for us, that his sacrifice was for us. It's in your precious and holy name that we pray. Amen. You can be seated.
Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her King.
All right. Well, for those of you I haven't met, my name's Trevor. I serve as the campus pastor here at SMCC Lehigh. I just want to say thanks so much for joining us for our Christmas Eve service. I'm looking forward to the time together. And tonight, you know, if you've been to Christmas Eve services before, you probably have some sense of what the typical kind of Christmas Eve message looks like. And if that's the case, I want to let you know that tonight will be a little bit different than maybe what you've experienced before. And in some ways, even the title of the message is a giveaway regarding that, because the title of it is A Mom, a Dragon, a Child, a Scepter. You know, which maybe half of that sounds like Christmas and half of it sounds like Dungeons and Dragons, right? And it's like, what is happening here? I'm not really sure. The hope is that by the end of our conversation together, it's clear why that is the case, why this is the title, and hopefully it's something that adds to your experience this Christmas season. But I want to get started just by sharing this idea first, which is Christmas is a battle. That Christmas, the season itself, so often what it presents to us is so many individual battles. You can even see this in so many of the favorite movies that mark this season. For example, Clark Griswold, in Christmas Vacation, he experiences one battle after another, one of which is just experiencing life as a Bears fan. And so, I'm kidding, I'm a Packers fan, so I'm still mourning. But that was a loud laugh. It's okay. It's okay. I'll recover. I'll be okay. So, yeah, a lot of battles in that movie that he faces in the Christmas season with his relatives, with the lights, with his neighbors. If you jump over to Kevin McAllister in Home Alone, he faces a battle against a couple of burglars who are attempting to take his home, and at a certain point, they don't even seem interested in stealing anymore. They just want to beat this little kid up. And so that's a battle that he finds himself in. And we experience that too. If you've ever had basically, if you've ever committed to the attempt of trying to take Christmas family photos and get everyone dressed in the right clothes and everyone kind of looking right in the right direction and then smiling while they look in the right direction and doing that all at the same time, you can know that is a bit of a battle. But in a lot of ways, the Christmas season, it presents battles to us even in, I think, a deeper sense, right? Because one of the interesting things about life is that, if you and I, if we were kind of like open and honest with each other and we're willing to go there in the conversation, I don't think it would take us that long to get to the point where we would understand about each other that we both experienced some loss in this life. That every one of us in this room, we've experienced suffering in this life. And it seems like year after year, the Christmas season comes around, and one of the reasons we love it is because it's marked by this joy, this wonder, this happiness, even the sense of nostalgia for us who are kind of looking back on childhood. But at the same time, it's a season of the year where every time we come into it, it feels like there's a new loss or there's something new to grieve in this particular time of year. It's hard to go through this time of the year and not remember the people who used to be part of our Christmas and they're not there anymore. And so in a lot of ways, Christmas is a battle, both on the outside and on the inside. But when we look to the Bible, one of the things it tells us is that Christmas is more than just a battle in these individual ways or these specific ways, but beyond that, Christmas is actually a cosmic battle. That there's actually a lot happening within the event that we celebrate each and every Christmas year. And you can even see this within the biblical writings, but typically that's not where we actually go. So often when it comes to this season, the songs and the carols that we sing and the different nativity scenes that we put up and even the cards that we send out that have depictions of these things, even the passages that we use throughout this season from the Bible, so many of them are focused on what you could call Christmas from the earthly perspective. Here's one of them, Luke chapter 2, verses 10 and 11. It says, "But the angel said to them," saying to the shepherds, right? This group of shepherds who are gathered together in a field out at night around a little town called Bethlehem in the first century Israel. They're just doing their work, and all of a sudden an angel shows up and says to them, "Do not be afraid," because every time you see an angel in the Bible, it's terrifying. It's not just like a chubby little baby with wings. It's like a scary thing. And so the angel's like, "Hey, you don't have to be afraid. I know I'm scary, but I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people." And today, in the town of David, which is the town of Bethlehem, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord, the Anointed One, the one you've been waiting for, the King that was promised to you centuries ago. This one is here. And so that, in so many ways, represents Christmas from the earthly perspective. But again, what we're doing tonight is looking at it from a slightly different perspective, because the Bible also offers to us another angle on this event, which is one that you could call the heavenly perspective. The Bible is a collection of 66 books written across a 1,500-year period, over 40 different authors, and yet they all fit together and tell one story. But the final book in that collection, number 66, is a book called Revelation. It was written by a guy named John, who was actually one of Jesus' closest friends and one of his disciples, one of his students. And at the tail end of John's life, he has this experience, and he basically writes it down and sends it as a letter. And it's a book that comes to be known as Revelation. That is apocalyptic literature. To you and I, it's like bizarre. It's like more bizarre than a Black Mirror episode. You're like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. Excuse me, didn't mean to do that. Oh my goodness, we'll have to post another service. So I don't know what is going on here. But I promise you, within ancient Jewish literature, this actually makes sense. This is a style of writing that they used. And so that being the case, Revelation 12, we're going to go ahead and jump into it. This passage that I promise you has everything to do with Christmas. So Revelation 12, 1-8, verse 1. It says, "A great sign appeared in heaven, A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth, right? So we see one sign here, which is a woman who appears in heaven, clothed with the sun, standing on the moon, a crown of 12 stars upon her head. Then you see another sign occur. Verse 3, then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. The woman is giving birth. The dragon's waiting for it so that he can devour the child the second this occurs. And yet you see that this doesn't actually happen. Verse 5, she gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael, basically who's referred to as a guardian angel for the people of Israel throughout the Old Testament, he and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But the dragon was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. So, Merry Christmas. That's the message. Hope it makes sense. Okay, so apocalyptic literature, it's presenting these images that feel bizarre, and yet there is a very significant thing that this is trying to communicate to us. We just have to know how to make sense of it. And so if we break it down a little bit, what you see is there's the first sign, which is the woman. And she's clothed with the sun, she stands on the moon, and she's got a crown with 12 stars on it. All of that is a clue to understand who and what she is and what she represents, right? She's a sign, so it means she points to something beyond herself. And all of those elements, the sun, the moon, the 12 stars, those actually call back, they kind of hyperlink back to a dream that an individual, a guy by the name of Joseph, has in the very first book of the Bible. And when he has the dream, all of these elements, they have to do with his story and how his life is going to unfold. But here, when we take that into context with this woman who is a sign, what it's telling us is that she represents the people of God. That in the Old Testament, right, she represents the people of Israel. That on the other side of Jesus' death and resurrection, she represents the church. She represents the people of God. But even furthermore, in the midst of that, she represents one individual person who is Mary, the mother of Jesus. And so when we see a woman who is pregnant and about to give birth, this is Mary, the mother of Jesus, about to give birth, really, which is what we celebrate each and every Christmas. So that's the first sign. The second sign is this enormous red dragon. And it's like, what on earth does that mean? Well, red is, it's red not because it's a fire dragon, although it may be as opposed to a water dragon. It's red because red is the color of blood. Blood is the symbol of death. It means that this is a dragon that caused chaos, that wreaks havoc, that brings death and destruction to this world. That's its intent, that's its purpose, that's its desire, is to bring death. It goes on to describe it as having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns. So 7 and 10, biblically speaking, are both numbers that represent a fullness or even a completeness. And so if you kind of work that out, heads, biblically speaking, refers to authority. So a completeness of authority. Horns has to do with power and the ability to actually deal destruction out. 10 horns, complete power in a way. And crowns has to do with both authority and even wealth beyond that. And so you've got 7 heads, 10 horns upon each of them, 7 crowns upon every one of those heads. In other words, this is a beast who has essentially a completeness of authority that is unmatched, is unchallenged, both in authority and in its power, in its ability to actually wreak havoc and bring chaos and bring death and destruction upon this earth, and is wealthy beyond imagination. It goes on to say its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth as a way of describing its ability to actually bring destruction in this world. And then again, when we see these two signs, right, interacting, the woman is giving birth, and the dragon is waiting for that to happen so it can destroy the child immediately. But as the passage goes on to describe it, what you see is that the baby is born, and even though a baby is helpless and defenseless and unable to do anything to save itself against anything, let alone an enormous dragon that's red and has 7 heads, right, and 10 horns upon every single head, and yet the child is not destroyed. It says the child is actually snatched up to heaven, snatched up to God and God's throne. And then the woman on the other side of this flees into the wilderness for a very specific amount of time, 1,260 days. So maybe you're asking yourself, okay, there's some things happening here, but how on earth does this tie into Christmas? I get that it's heavily in perspective, right? It's pulling back the curtain on the earthly perspective so we can see it, but how does this have anything to do with Jesus and Mary and Joseph and a baby in a manger? One of the ways we see this is if you jump over to Matthew chapter 2, you actually can see when the veil comes back closed, when the curtain comes back closed, you can see what's happening here with both sides of the coin. So Matthew 2:16 tells us, when Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi. Quick context, Herod, at the time of Jesus' birth, was the ruler, the king, over the people of Israel, right? Rome ruled over everyone, but they'd given him authority to be the king in that particular area. And he was a guy who was known for being paranoid. He had killed some of his own sons, his own flesh and blood, because he was worried that they might pose a threat to his own reign upon the throne. So this is a murderous guy who was not above killing other people, even his own flesh and blood. Well, the Magi are these Persian wise men, basically Persian royals, who make their way all the way to Israel because they've seen this star that to them and their background information is an indication that a king over the people of Israel, and even a king who is uniquely able to be worshiped, that it's right to actually worship this God. They realize that this king has been born, and they come all the way to find that king so they can honor him and meet him that has just been born. But, when you're coming to find a brand new king, what's the first place you would look? It's not a little town called Bethlehem in a manger. You would look to the palace. And so they go to where Herod is. They ask him the question about where this new king is. Herod hears about it. His paranoia sets in, and he's like, why don't you go find him? Let me know where he is so I can come and worship, so I can come and kill him, so I can come and worship him myself. Right? That's what he's intending to do. But the wise men, they figure this out. And so they meet Jesus. They honor him. They bring their gifts. Fun story, when I was a kid, I was in a Christmas pageant one time, and I was a wise man, and my line was, I bring gold. And I can tell you, I nailed it. It was great, but they realized that Herod is insincere. They realized that he wants to kill this child, and so they basically slipped town without telling him. And that's when this verse picks up. When Herod realized that he'd been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. In other words, he knows that the chances of actually finding this child and killing this specific child are slim to none. And so he just orders a blanket genocide over every boy 2 years old and under in the area, because he's thinking, if he's still there, at the very least, I can know that I've got him taken care of. He's that paranoid. As a grown man, he's worried about a child that is 2 years old and younger, that he's willing to actually order a genocide of his own people in order to prevent some potential threat to his throne years down the road. I think that's hard to understand in some ways until you recognize that what Revelation is attempting to do is pull back the curtain on the earthly perspective and allow us to see things from a heavenly perspective. That Herod, in his paranoia, in his murderous intent, he is just one manifestation of this red dragon that is a symbol that points to really spiritual darkness in its entirety. That Herod and his genocide is one manifestation of this dragon that seeks to bring nothing but death and destruction and chaos to this life and to this world. And it attempts to do that through Herod, and yet it fails. And that's why Christmas is really when the rightful ruler of the universe enters enemy territory. It is the moment when the one who is King of Kings and Lord of Lords enters our human existence in order to bring about our redemption and to reconcile us back to the relationship with God that we were made for, and ultimately to free us from the tyranny of this deathly dragon. But I think at this point, you could ask the question, well, if that's the case, then why are things actually the way that they are? If the woman did give birth, right? If Mary gave birth to Jesus, if Jesus really did live, if he really did teach and say all the things that he said, that the Bible tells us he said, if he really performed the miracles, if he really did die and then rise from the grave, if all of this is actually true, then why are things still the way that they are? Why do we still live in the world that is marked by suffering and violence? Why is it still dark? If Jesus is who he said he is, if he has accomplished what the Bible has said he's accomplished, then why each and every year when we come into the Christmas season, why is there more loss and more pain that we experience each and every year? When we jump back to Revelation, the fact of the matter is that the passage continues, and it actually gives us an indication of why things are the way they are. Revelation 12:13, it tells us this. It goes on to say, when the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, that he had lost the war in heaven, that this child had been born and he did not devour him, that this child was snatched up to heaven, which is essentially the shortest summary you could possibly imagine of his life, death, resurrection, and ascension. When the dragon realized that he had lost, he changes his strategy. He alters his tactics. It says he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. And again, the woman is a representation, a symbol of the people of God. And so, in other words, we live in this portion of the story where, it says after the child was snatched up to heaven, it says the woman essentially went out into the wilderness for 1,260 days. And it's like, why such a specific number? It's because what that works out to is about 42 months, which symbolically represents the amount of time and years that the people of Israel spent between Egypt and the Promised Land. Right? That Egypt, which is the place where they were in bondage, where they were in slavery, where they were oppressed, right? Which transfers symbolically to what it looks like to live in darkness, in the midst of violence, in the midst of suffering, where death reigns over us. That to be in that place, the amount of time that it took them to go from there to the Promised Land was roughly 40 years. And the Promised Land represents the return of Jesus when heaven meets earth, when all things are made right, when all things are made new. And it's that we look forward to. But we find ourselves in this place of the story, on the other side of his birth, death, and resurrection, and yet still awaiting his return, where we find ourselves, just like the people of Israel, on the other side of Egypt, but not yet to the Promised Land. And what you find in the middle is the wilderness. The wilderness is essentially where we find ourselves today, with a dragon who understands that it has lost the war, that it has lost the battle, that it has failed to achieve the victory that it set out to attempt. It knows that its final day is coming. And so in this period of time, it essentially seeks to cause as much damage as it possibly can to the woman, to the people of God. It's just bent on basically chaos and destruction, knowing that its final day is coming. And yet, if there is one comfort to be offered us within the broader story, it's that this period does come to an end. That we don't exist in the wilderness forever. We don't exist in this place of violence and suffering forever. That at some point the darkness will end and Jesus will return and all things will be made right and made new. And it's that we look forward to. And so as we wander essentially through the wilderness, anticipating what's ahead and looking back to what came before, the question is, as we deal with the suffering of this world, as we deal with the violence of this world, how does Christmas help us? How does it help us when we see things from not just an earthly perspective, but a heavenly perspective as well? The answer is, when we look at Christmas, we can understand very clearly what God is saying to us in this event, that what he's saying to us is I am coming for you, and nothing is going to stop me. Because that was the moment that the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the one who brought all things into being, entered into our existence to live the perfect life that you and I never could, subjecting himself to the violence and suffering of this world, entering into death on our behalf, so that we could know something other than the darkness that marks this world one day. When we look to the birth of Jesus, we can know that that's exactly what he set out to do. And so, I think one of the things so many people wrestle with is, why is there evil in the world? How do we make sense of the evil of the world? And there's a lot of different explanations out there. When it comes to me personally, I find this to be the most compelling answer to the reason that this is the story of reality that we find ourselves in the midst of, and one day it will not be like this. But I think one of the ways the Christmas story helps us is the way that it enables us to respond to the darkness, to respond to the suffering and violence of this world differently, even here and now. there was a man by the name of Cecil Brinkley, who was an assistant principal at a small school, basically on in the brinks of Atlanta, Georgia, back in the late 90s. And I would imagine that most of his life, went on just like most of us, one day just like another, until all of a sudden one day it started and went on to be unlike any other day that he'd ever known throughout his life. The day was May 20th, 1999, when I'm sure he woke up, maybe had his morning coffee, got in his car, drove to school just like he would any other day, knowing he's only got a couple of weeks until summer sets in and school is done for a while. And yet what would happen on this particular day is one of the kids would come out to school not with an intention to see his friends, not with an intention to learn, not with an intention to do any of the normal things that a kid goes to school for, but he would come with the intention of violence. And he would come equipped to do so. There was a school shooting. And in the midst of it, this 15-year-old boy, he exited the school and essentially cast aside the rifle that he'd used up until that point. But he paused outside of the building, not fleeing, not re-entering, almost pausing in the midst of a moment, trying to consider what he does next, trying to figure out his next move. And we know that up until this point, he had come to this school intent on violence. And it's while he's in this moment, paused on the outside of the school, that Cecil Brinkley sees him. And he has to make a decision about what to do, right? That this individual, this boy, is still armed. He's already shown his commitment to commit violence. He has every ability to re-enter the school at this point, a school that is still filled with children. And so the question is, what will Cecil Brinkley do in the midst of this situation, knowing that he doesn't have any of the equipment that he needs to protect himself in this situation? So what will he do? And in this scenario, what he chose to do, was to walk out the doors of the building and to begin to approach this 15-year-old boy. And when he did, the boy sees him, and he immediately raises the gun and he points it at him, right? A cocked and loaded .357 Magnum. And all of a sudden, Cecil Brinkley finds himself staring down the barrel of a gun, knowing that this kid in an instant could end his life. And yet in this moment, he continues to take one step after another, approaching this boy. And he just continues to say the phrase over and over again, "Give me the gun." And he takes a step closer and he says, "Give me the gun." He can see the kid shaking, right? He can see him sweating. He can see the amount of stress that this kid is under, and yet he continues to take one step closer after another, saying, "Give me the gun, give me the gun," until finally he reaches proximity to the boy where he has the ability to take the gun. And the boy lets him. And in that moment, the kid just collapses into his embrace and breaks down crying. We do live in a world that is marked by violence and suffering. It's still dark. But when we look to what Christmas tells us, it gives us the ability to respond to that darkness differently. Because on the one hand, it gives us the ability to recognize it for what it is. That even on that particular day, the violence of that individual, of that boy, was brought forward just as another attempt of the dragon to bring about as much death and chaos and destruction as he can. And he is doing so not because he has won, but because he has lost. And so every example we see of death, every example we see of destruction, every example we see of violence and suffering in this world is something that we can recognize as the evidence that Jesus has won. And one day all of these things will come to an end. And in addition to that, we have the ability to remember that the end of this life is not the end of all things. Right, as Cecil Brinkley made the decision to step out, to engage with this kid, to essentially put his life on the line, to engage in this way, I don't know how you do that without the recognition that the end of this life is not the end of all things. When we recognize that that is the case, not because of anything you or I have done, but purely because of what Jesus has done on our behalf, it gives us the ability to respond to the suffering, to respond to the loss, to respond to the violence, to respond to the darkness of this world differently. Because we recognize it for what it is, and we remember that the end of this life is far from the end of all things. And that is only true because Jesus lived and died and rose again for us. But before all of that, it was because he was born for us. It was because he subjected himself to the violence and suffering of this world so that one day he could bring it to an end for us. So that one day his light would eclipse the darkness that surrounds it completely and entirely, forever. And so in light of that, we're going to have the chance to bring our service to a close, really in the way that we do each and every year. And I think in light of what we see with Revelation 12 and the insights it has to offer us surrounding the event of Jesus' birth, I think in some ways it adds to the significance of this song. Right? Every year we sing Silent Night as we close out our services, and we're going to do so tonight as well. And so often what that song leads us to understand is Christmas from the earthly perspective. But tonight, I want to invite you to consider singing the song and reflecting upon what it means from the heavenly perspective. That because Jesus was born for us, we can know that the darkness of this life and even the pain that we feel each and every Christmas season is something that is temporary because the battle has already been won. And so, band's coming on up, and they're going to lead us in the song here as we close out our service. Quick pro tip on the candles. If you've got the lit one, you take the unlit one and bring it to it. You tip the unlit one. Otherwise, those flames will dance on you, and we don't want to set any hairspray on fire. So, but yeah, we're going to go ahead and get those lit, and then the band's going to lead us in singing Silent Night. I just want to say thanks so much for coming on out, and I hope that you have the ability this Christmas season to find a sense of rest and peace in the reality that Jesus has won. And because of that, we can know, even as we sing in a room that is dark and yet filled with candlelight, that one day the light will eclipse the darkness completely and entirely. And it's that we look forward to.
Would you stand and sing with us? Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory stream from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing Alleluia. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. You can go ahead and blow out your candles. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. I want to tell you about an upcoming series that we have in 2 weeks. It's called What It Means to Be. If not, we'll see you back this Sunday. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. We love you guys.